I love this. Man, this is just great. Good morning. Thank you to all my friends I know already who are here today, and to those who came out just because they knew that I was going to be here this morning. And thank you for that beautiful song, Tricia, David All, everybody who was here. I have this aspiration to be a female David Alt, you see. All of the musicians who become ministers, or all the ministers who discover they're musicians, are on my list of favorites. So the title of my talk today is The Light Returns as You. And of course, the term return implies that the light went somewhere. But we know now that it really didn't. The truth is that we're the ones who turned away. We're celebrating the first day of spring, this point that is halfway between the darkest and the brightest day of the year, the shortest and the longest, this point that is halfway between our returning as an earth and as a people, in this hemisphere, by the way, as far as we might from that source of light and warmth and life. And we're halfway back to this place where we will have our greatest exposure to it, our closest relationship to it. And springtime is this wonderful opportunity. It's like nature's free refresher course. Because what happens is when the light shines so brightly like it does this morning, that light wakens up within each of us. We kind of can't help it. It's so easy right now, when the days are getting longer and brighter, when they start sooner and end later, for us to be happy, joy-filled, to imagine new things, to embody newness and to express it. It's easier right now. So it's a wonderful time to take advantage of this opportunity, because we know that these cycles and these seasons are taking place, and they'll continue to take place. And there'll be times when we experience the short days, the long dark nights. And we'll be able to call upon that light because we know it's in here. If we study it and experience it and take it in and embrace it and acknowledge it right now, then those times when it doesn't seem to be apparent, we can know that it still exists. It's a funny thing that the people in Australia and New Zealand are having the opposite experience. It's fall. They're going into the darkness. All throughout nature, these opposites are taking place, and they're all part of a greater perfection. So these cycles have been celebrated and honored for thousands of years. There have been myths, fairy tales, folklore, traditions created around these initial experiences. People have identified not only the literal gift of the returning of light, of more daylight in which to operate, maybe to grow food or to hunt, more daylight to allow things to grow easily, well, to be high. Not just that, but also metaphorically, that there's a connection that has been discovered. There's a connection to these cycles that has been celebrated. And it's told about in so many traditions. I kept thinking as I was writing this about the native concept of something growing corn as being good. So these days that are longer and brighter and warmer and richer are opportunities for us to grow corn too. So at this time, we not only celebrate that we have more daylight, we can go out and have more fun, we also celebrate that there's a lightness in our hearts that's especially obvious. It's hard to avoid right now. Even for those of us who may have felt a little bit glum, maybe we got caught up in the seeming doldrums of cold, damp darkness. The mists are lifting. Everything's getting greener. There are flowers blooming. And it's happening within each of us also. So we know that the earth has its cycles of turning in relationship to the sun, which affects how much of that we experience. And obviously that has its effect on us. But how do we metaphorically turn away or towards the light? Well, I had some pretty funny thoughts this week about that. From the humorous to the mundane. From the light to the serious. And as is customary, what I plan to say changed every day. It may have changed since this morning before I got here. When we have this experience of the appearance of the absence of light, if we don't know what it is, if we don't know that it's actually eternally present, we can get really caught up in that. Imagine the first time sentient beings saw the sun go down. And how much they celebrated when it came up the next day. That's where a lot of those amazing myths and stories come from. That primitive, visceral experience of these cycles. But there's another thing that we do beyond the natural turning, the natural tuning in to the cycles of nature. I'm more familiar with those in the fall when I'm asked to slow down. It could be anything from maybe getting a head cold to a speeding ticket. So I'm very familiar with being tied to those cycles. I'm also familiar to being intuitively connected with these because I have gotten busier. I have felt more inspired and more industrious and more alive. So there's another thing that we do, though, beyond that instinctive relationship, beyond being part of the natural order of things. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of this movement, said that nature waits upon man's discovery. He says, too, that we could not be truly free if all of these choices, for example, about our relationship to light and life, were made for us. So here's where another part comes in. Beyond the automatic, beyond the cyclical, beyond that part that is naturally taken care of, there's another part. It's called self-choice. It's called free will. And I'd like to liken that part to a dimmer switch. We have this opportunity. If you can imagine over here a giant dimmer switch, okay? Just work on it. It has a slider. I'm talking about the kind that slides down and up. And you can use a dial too, right? The point is, there are things that we do consciously and unconsciously with our self-choice and our free will that either open us to that light, no matter which part of the cycle we're in, okay, or dim it down. Now with electricity, you know that every time you give it a place to move to and express, more comes. It's infinite. It's the same with light, with life energy. We give it a place to go and more comes, and we experience increase. We narrow that down or block it off or obstruct it in some way. It can't go there. A couple things it's going to do probably it will build up and create some heat. Metaphorically. That could be a festering. It could be dis-ease. It could be bad mood. It could be a hair-trigger temper. If there's something that you were inspired to become or do and you didn't allow it, it would have that energy would kind of get stuck there and backed up and create friction and heat. Now in electricity, they provide for that with certain mechanisms. That's the end of that. I'm not an electrician or a scientist, so we'll stop right there. But what happens with this dimmer switch is that we have the opportunity to either dim or brighten our light, our expression of that light with our self-choice and our free will. Now we talk often In celebrations like this, we sing about it in a lot of the songs that we sing. We do a lot of this kind of work in those seminars. You know the ones where you stay in a hotel for 2 or 3 days and you get so excited you can hardly contain yourself, and you go back home and your friends think you're very strange. And what happens after a time? Perhaps you begin to dim it down just a little bit so as not to disturb anyone. Oh, well, I wouldn't want to be too bright. I might embarrass my neighbor. Upset the balance of things. So there are lots of things that we do to open up or to close off our exposure to, our opening to, our embodiment and experience of this life. And a funny set of them. They have some names in pop psychology. You might recognize them. But I'll just share some examples. Let's say that you're feeling hungry, but as far as you can tell, no one else around you is feeling hungry. So you think, well, I'll just wait. It's okay. It'll be fine. Maybe you're on a road trip with 5 other friends, or just your partner, someone close, and you need to stop and use a restroom, but you wouldn't want to mess with the timing of your trip, wouldn't want to be an inconvenience. What if you've been pushing through all kinds of interesting activities during the day and you feel a little tired? Would you take a nap? Acknowledge that you need some rest, or press on? I would imagine that those 3 very common examples are identifiable to many of you. And there are more. What if you have an opinion or an idea that differs from those of the people you're with? Do you share it? What if you have this wild, exciting new idea to do something that maybe none of the people that you know, including yourself, has ever done before? Do you share that? There's this threshold of what we call acceptance. This threshold of acceptability, comfort, balance, the norm. In every culture, there are norms and mores. Learn that from your sociological classes. There are things that are done and not done. And while there's so much to honor about traditions, it's important to be willing to release our tight grip on the past in order to allow something new to emerge. So maybe instead of slowly but surely, a little at a time, dimming our light by denying a need or a desire that allows us to function properly, or withholding a new idea, we could let those out. What if we did that? What would happen? See, the truth is, if we go back to the concept of cycles in nature, we've had some refresher courses right now. Do you want to talk about Japan? Or would you like to talk about the garden shed? There is constantly a perfect cycle of consummation, of gestation, of birth, of life, of death, of decay, and renewal. It's always happening. So what if we were to really know that and accept it and embrace it? It would be for us rather than against us. We could actually make use of that knowledge and harness that power for good in our lives. I mean, we all know how much energy it takes to resist what is. It doesn't work. We exhaust ourselves. In Science of Mind, we study natural law. And we don't try to change anything. We work with what is. We understand it. We cooperate with it. We allow it to work for us. Again, Ernest Holmes says, love points the way, and law makes the way possible. And for any of you who are new here, that's just the law of cause and effect. Or if you want something that sounds more current, the law of attraction. Even though that was first spoken of in the late 1800s in India. That's all we're talking about. What a wonderful thing to imagine that these cycles are part of the expression and the evidence of an intelligence that we can barely grasp, but we have available to us. So there's an opportunity then to trust those cycles, to make use of them, to let them work for us. And the other opportunity, of course, is to recognize that we've got this dimmer switch. It was so beautifully stated in that song that we're the ones who return. We're the ones who open ourselves to the source of our creation. It almost brings tears. It's such a beautiful, vulnerable experience of love. And vulnerability is the other thing that I wanted to share about this morning. There's some really fantastic books out there that many of us are reading because we're recognizing that old paradigms are not working anymore. Old definitions of marriage and partnership and relationships, old definitions of being a parent or a child, old definitions of being a woman or a man, so many more. How about directors and managers? Old definitions of what a leader is. They're different. This beautiful thing is happening in the cycles of human development right now. The old way is falling apart. We can celebrate that. We don't need to patch it up with duct tape. We don't need to try to keep it in place. We can let it go. There's some wonderful work by Meg Wheatley. She wrote a number of books. One of them is called Leadership and the New Science. Another one is called Finding Our Way. And she explains that equilibrium is a very dangerous thing. That entropy is this state where all possibilities have been used up. A system, when it reaches that point, is closed to new possibility. And balance, equilibrium, well, that's where you get stagnation. That's where you get decay. That's where you reach the end of the line. There are two things about the end of the line. One is, it's okay. It's part of a bigger cycle. We can embrace it and celebrate it. The other thing is it's the beginning of another line. It's the beginning of another cycle. So in this section of this book by Meg Wheatley, she talks about the beauty of upset. She talks about the beauty of what she calls disequilibrium. Something that completely disturbs the balance. There's an exchange of energy that happens then. There's a turning towards the light. The light energy is always available. The truth is that we, or our systems, the systems of us, when we experience upset, are opened. And we're made available to that light. And we might even be willing to consider it in a new way. There are some teachings that recognize the importance of getting you when you're kind of down, because that's when you might be open to a new idea. There's a beautiful greeting card by a woman named Diane English in North Carolina. She has a great company called the Great Cosmic Happiness Card Company. I said that word. And it says, "Blessed are the cracked, for they shall let in the light." And I remember I got a copy of that and I sent it to Barry Heerman because he has a beautiful teaching in a book called The Noble Purpose. And he too talks about that blessing of being cracked wide open. How much light gets in then. So we know, again, that we have this free refresher course. We're halfway to June 21st, which will be the longest and the brightest and the warmest, most magnificent day of all. We're well on our way. We're finding it difficult to sleep late. We're tuned in. Some of us are thinking about gardening, and some are thinking about the farmers' markets will be opening soon. We'll go get some of that stuff. And we also know that at any point, but why not now, we can reach over and nudge that switch up. Next time we have a very basic need or desire, we can say, I need this. I want that. And we'll discover that it doesn't upset anyone. Next time we have a concern or a fear, we know that we can share it with someone and we will be supported. Next time we have a great idea, we can stick our necks out and share that. And we'll discover that someone else was thinking about something similar too and is delighted to hear about it. And each time we do that, we open to our light, we avail ourselves of it, we get to experience more of it. We get to do that. And there's a really neat thing that happens. When we dare to step outside of the bounds of our cultural norms, when we dare to do something different, seemingly unique, this wonderful thing happens. Because that light in us, in its awakened state, is like a tuning fork. That same light that is present in someone else that may have been asleep wakes up. It recognizes itself, and it begins to shine more and more brightly. And then what happens is that more people express authentically their needs and desires. More people share, knowing that they're safe to do so, what their greatest fears are. They're brought to the light of day. They're addressed. They're brought down to their right size. They're handled. And more of those great ideas, which are the inspiration of Spirit itself to be made manifest by means of us, are shared and become our reality. In this way, spring comes eternal to all alike. So I invite you to embrace these cycles. If you don't know much about them, find out more. And if you do, find out more still. I invite you to be authentic and remember that beyond the automatic functions and cycles in your life, you are the one who has the power to brighten your light. The gift has already been given, and the only one that can open it is you. I invite you to indulge in this free refresher course of the experience, the expression, and the presence of light. That is how the light returns as you. So I'd like you to close your eyes now and join me in a prayer. I know that Spirit is infinite intelligence. It is boundless, overflowing love, perfect, pure, spiritual substance, eternal life and immutable power. And it has made each and every one of us in its image, in its likeness, out of itself. It is all there is, all we are. Therefore, I know that all we can ever think of, feel, choose, speak of, act upon, encounter, or experience that is true and real is this light, this intelligence, this love, this pure spiritual substance, this eternal life. And so I know with that assured that our lives are blessed. I recognize for myself and everyone here that it is easy to know the truth. It's planted within each of us. At birth, it was there before we took shape and form. It is there afterwards too. We're always in the know. We're always loved, eternally supplied, sustained, and supported, inspired, animated, energized, and alive. And so I give thanks for all of the delicious and delightful ways that this blessing shows up. I'm so grateful that we're daring enough to be different, to be vulnerable, to be new, to allow the light to shine in more and new ways by means of us. I give thanks too because I know that the way that the law operates is that others awaken as well. And they too awaken to the most authentic expression of who they are, allowing more of Spirit to be made manifest and realized right here and right now. It is in great gratitude then that I release these words, knowing that they are the truth. And together as we open our eyes, we say, and so it is.